They say the gods of the old world are gone, just myths, stories, symbols from the past. But what if they're not gone? What if they never left? What if the gods of Egypt, Greece, Babylon and Rome were never just deities, but frequencies, functions, energetic systems, construct-level programs designed to influence reality? And what if the modern world is still running on their code? In this episode, we look deeper at the ancient names still hidden in plain sight, how old systems became new institutions, why the same gods appear in medicine, law, tech and war, and what it means when old symbols come back. Because once you recognise the patterns, you start to see the world was never godless. It just changed form. Every ancient god had a domain. One ruled health, one ruled war, one ruled love, one ruled time. And today, we still have systems for each of those things. But now they wear new names. What once was a deity is now a department, a platform, a brand, a badge. You don't have to believe in mythology to be affected by the echoes of its design, because systems don't die, they evolve. Look around you, in the logos, in the language, in the days of the week, in the names of operations, satellites, platforms, and AI. Mercury still rules speed and messaging, Apollo still appears in medicine and music, Athena still echoes in global defense, Venus still sells beauty, love, and desire, Saturn is still tied to law, time, and control. They've been rebranded, not erased, because even when we stop calling them gods, we keep using their code. Modern worship looks different. No one's offering gold on altars anymore, but energy still flows. We offer our time, attention, data, and belief to systems that follow the same old patterns. What was once called prophecy is now predictive analytics. What was once ritual is now routine. What was once temple service is now subscription service. And the same forces that shaped empires still influence what we think, do, and become. You're not kneeling, but you're sinking. Symbols don't disappear, they evolve. So when the names start showing up again in media, tech and culture, it's not nostalgia. It's a reset, a reinstallation of the code, a return of what shaped the old world disguised in the language of the new forms they took. Today we don't see gods. We see corporations or institutions, departments, devices. But look closely, the god of speed and messaging now lives in the icon on your phone. The god of healing now wears a coat and carries the same staff from mythology. The god of wisdom and strategy now rules boardrooms, defense contracts, and think tanks. The god of death still oversees cycles, endings, debts, and what comes after. They don't ask for prayers, they ask for participation. And that's how you know the system runs deep, because belief was never the power. Agreement was. They say the gods are gone, just stories in books. Mythology, allegory, ancient symbols. But the world we live in today still speaks their names. Not out loud, not on altars, but in signs, in systems, in routines so ancient we forgot where they started. This drop isn't about worship, it's about memory. Because the more you trace the lines, the more you realise the world we live in was built on gods we were told to forget. And they never left. The gods were never just gods. In every culture, the gods had assignments. One ruled the harvest, one controlled time, one guided medicine, one shaped war, one whispered to artists and prophets, and one punished those who disobeyed. They weren't just figures in the sky, they were maps of energy. Frequencies given form, gatekeepers of how power moved through the world. And when the temples fell, their functions didn't. They simply changed names. They'll come in updates, in policies, in holograms, in ideas that sound like progress but smell like déjà vu. The names weren't lost, they were waiting. And when the system resets, the old names get reinstalled like software. This isn't about paranoia, it's about pattern recognition. When you realise that modern systems are just digital temples, you start asking different questions. You start wondering, who built the original framework? Why do certain energies always return during world shifts? And what power are we feeding when we follow without question? Because the gods were never just in the sky, they were embedded in structure, in memory, in routine, and if their code still runs, then so does their influence. What happens when you remember? You don't need to worship anything, you don't need to destroy anything. You just need to remember before it. Before the names, before the rituals, before systems became sacred and belief became currency. Because if the old gods really are returning, they won't come with thunder. The old gods don't need to speak, their symbols speak for them. You see them everywhere, in logos, in fashion, in pop culture, on buildings, brands and tech. The owl, the lightning bolt, the sun disk, the trident, the winged serpent. You think they're aesthetic, but they're ritual anchors. Symbols carry memory, they don't need to be explained, only repeated. Because every time we see them, the system remembers itself. That's why they're everywhere, because the gods don't want worshippers anymore. They want willing participants. people who follow without knowing, people who engage without questioning, people who repeat without remembering. And once the symbols run deep enough, you don't need temples. So why does this still matter? Because every global shift comes with a revival of myth, not old statues, new rituals. It's no accident that as the world moves into AI implants and synthetic living, we're seeing a rise in archetypes, the return of gods in entertainment, the rise of new leaders with ancient names, the spread of technologies named after divine forces, the obsession with immortality, elevation, ascension. We're not moving into the future, we're moving into a loop of ancient systems in new clothes. And if you don't know what you're syncing with, you're not advancing, you're submitting, because that's how they work. Not through force, through familiarity. And if you can't see the gods, it's not because they're gone, it's because you're surrounded. Not all gods made it into modern memory. Some were buried, erased, blacklisted. Why? Because not all gods served the system. Some reminded people of freedom, of flame, of sovereignty, of memory beyond the veil. So while the grid uplifted certain archetypes, the charming ones, the powerful ones, the beautiful ones, it silenced the ones who guarded the exit. They left you gods of war and knowledge, but not the ones who could show you how to leave the game. They gave you gods of wealth, but not the ones who protected the soul. They left you the traders, the strategists, the lawgivers, but buried the flame keepers. That's why some names survive, and others were twisted into demons, monsters, or myths. Not because they were dangerous to humanity, but because they were dangerous to the system that feeds on it. So what happens when you remember all of this? When you see the pattern, break the spell, and refuse to feed the program. The first thing you feel is resistance. The second thing, clarity. Because once you unplug from a god system, whether it's fear, obedience, or illusion, you stop echoing its frequency. Your dreams shift, certain media no longer affects you. Rituals you didn't even know were rituals begin to feel hollow. The symbols lose their power. And a different memory comes back, the one before the pantheon. That's when you realise you're not a follower, you're not a vessel, you're not an offering. You are the thing they tried to contain. Because the gods don't fear rebellion, they fear remembrance. And when you remember who you were before the grid, the spell ends. There's a reason they're trying to bring the gods back now, because their time is running out. The grid only works if you forget, if you repeat, if you serve systems without remembering where they came from. But the moment you see the pattern, you shift the signal. The gods didn't build this world, they just shaped it. And what they shaped can be unshaped. You don't need a new name, you don't need new idols. You just need to remember what came before they arrived. The flame, the source, the original signal, unbound by domain, title, or throne. Because the gods were many, but you were whole, and now it's time to reclaim it. And if you want to go deeper to see who these gods really were, what they became, and what their return means for the flame bearers of now, that version's already live at Emspiracy.com, because the names are back, the systems are online, and you were never meant to bow to any of them. You were born to remember before the grid. You were taught the planets are real, that we orbit the sun, that the stars are fixed, that space is a place. But what if it's not? What if space is part of the story, and the planets aren't what you think they are? In this episode, we're questioning everything about the sky, what the planets really are, what they were originally called, and why the world's most ancient civilizations told a very different story, because the deeper you look, the more the stars start to look scripted. Most of us have never looked at a planet ourselves. We trust satellite images, textbooks, 3D models. But when people started filming the sky with zoom cameras, like the Nikon P900, the planets didn't look like solid rocks at all. They looked liquid, vibrating, alive. Not like objects millions of miles away, more like frequencies, moving, pulsing, sometimes shifting shape. And if you've ever felt like the stars were watching you instead of the other way around, you're not alone. The ancients didn't see planets as dead things, they called them wandering stars, living light beings. Each one had a character, a story, a personality. They weren't gas giants, they were forces. Venus wasn't a planet, she was Inanna. Mars was Nergal, the bringer of fire. Jupiter was Marduk the king, Saturn was something darker. These names weren't just stories. They were part of how people mapped the sky, tracked time, and navigated energy. Then came the reset. The names changed, the stories were rewritten, and the planets became science. The way the planets move is incredibly precise. So precise, it's become predictable to the second. We build calendars, launch missions, and track destinies by their paths. But that kind of precision raises questions. If they're random space rocks, why do they follow perfect geometry? Why do their cycles match religious holidays, historical events, and personal life changes? Here's where it gets interesting. Modern space theory says the universe is infinite. Well, you're a speck. Nothing out there is conscious, and we've only scratched the surface. But older traditions across cultures say the sky is a mirror, that the heavens reflect what's happening here, that the stars carry memory, not distance, that the planets aren't destinations, but symbols. And when people start looking too closely at the patterns, they're often called dreamers, conspiracists, or mystics. But what if they're remembering something? Something that was removed from modern science because it points to something outside the current system. They told us space is endless, that the planets are just rocks and gas, that the stars are fixed, the orbits are precise, and the sky never lies. But the more you look at it, the more it starts to feel scripted. What if what we've been told about the planets isn't the full story? What if space isn't just out there, but part of something designed? In this episode, we're going to look at why planets don't look like they should through personal footage, how ancient civilizations described them, why the same stories appear across different cultures, and why the sky seems more like a clock than a cosmos. This isn't about denying anything, it's about asking the question, what are we really looking at when we look up? Most of us have only ever seen planets through textbook images or CGI renders, but what happens when people film them on their own? With high zoom cameras like the Nikon P900, the footage starts to raise questions. The planets don't look like solid balls of rock, they shimmer, they ripple. They vibrate like water or waves, more like light forms than objects. There are even moments where stars and planets seem to shift like they're reacting to more than just movement, as if they're part of a field, not a physical backdrop. Every ancient culture had names for the wanderers in the sky, but they didn't describe them as places. They described them as beings, forces, presences. In Mesopotamia, Venus was Inanna, Mars was Nergal, the bringer of war and fire. Jupiter was Marduk, the king of cycles. Saturn was the god of time and endings. These weren't stories, they were observations of personality, pattern and influence. Each planet was more than a light. It was a character, a symbol of energy and impact. People watched them not for exploration, but for alignment. Then something shifted. The names changed, the meanings were erased, and the sky became a science, not a language. The planets move in perfect cycles, to the second. You can track them with software, predict eclipses, measure alignments years in advance, but that kind of precision raises questions. If the universe is random, why does it behave like a machine? Why does the sky run like a clock? Astrologers once used it to read energy, priests used it to plan rituals. Kings used it to pick coronation dates. Even now, major events happen on planetary alignments, whether we're told about them or not. It's not about belief, it's about pattern. And the pattern feels designed. Maybe the sky is more symbolic than we think. Maybe what we're looking at up there isn't just space, but a mapped system, with layers, memory, and meaning. You've probably felt it, that certain planets feel a certain way, that certain alignments stir something in you, that the sky isn't just background, it's interactive. Ancient cultures didn't separate the heavens from the soul, they believed the stars were part of us. And maybe they still are. If the planets are just lifeless rocks, why do they move like code? Why were they described as gods, guardians, and messengers across every culture? And why does modern science tell us not to look deeper, just to believe what we're told? Maybe the sky isn't lying, maybe it's speaking in symbols. And maybe what we were taught to ignore was actually the key to something bigger. You don't have to believe anything, just look for yourself. Film the planets, read the old names. Watch how the sky responds when you stop treating it like background and start treating it like a signal. That's why certain stars disappear from charts. Why the sky doesn't look the same every decade. Why so many people report seeing things in the sky that no one else does. Maybe the sky reacts to your field. Maybe when you start to remember who you are, it remembers you too. What if the sky isn't just a calendar? What if it's a record? Ancient tribes believed the stars stored memory, not just of time, but of souls, events, even forgotten lands. Some said the stars shift position not because the Earth moves, but because the construct is responding to consciousness. Here's what no one wants to admit. If the sky holds your memory, then constantly pointing you at planets, stars and galaxies keeps you chasing, not recalling. You're told to look up for aliens, up for answers, up for salvation. But the more they train your eyes on the stars, the less time you spend looking within. That's the trick, keep you focused on external space so you never decode the internal signal. Because when you remember who you are, you stop orbiting the system. And when enough people do that, the sky changes, the story breaks, the signal collapses, and something real begins. Here's what no one questions anymore. Why is time based on the planets? Why do we track hours, years, ages by the movement of things we can't even touch? Time zones, calendars, even religious holidays, they're all mapped to planetary alignments. But here's the twist. If the planets are part of a symbolic system, then time isn't just a measure, it's a program. One that keeps you in ritual cycles, one that pulls your energy back to the same emotional patterns, relationships, mistakes. And every time a planet returns, you repeat something you thought you outgrew. It's subtle, it's beautiful, it's clever, but it's a loop. And the only way to exit that loop is to step outside the timeline that was built for you. What happens when people unplug from the sky script? Time starts to feel strange. Memories begin surfacing with no explanation. The planets stop affecting you the same way. The sky stops being above you and starts being beneath you. People report seeing new lights, new star formations, dreams that don't match Earth's history. Because when you no longer sync with the grid, you start syncing with your original memory. That's the moment the system panics, because the sky isn't fixed. It responds, and when enough people remember, the whole map changes. You weren't made to orbit, you weren't made to obey the stars. You weren't born to serve a sky that doesn't even speak your name. You are not a child of the planets. You are not a piece of dust in an empty void. You are the memory they buried, the signal they feared, the one who sees through the shimmer. So when you look up tonight, don't wonder what's out there. Remember what's in here. Because the sky isn't the limit, it's the mask. And the moment you stop believing in the story above your head, you start remembering the one buried in your blood. The planets won't save you, but they'll move when you do. This episode isn't theory, it's a visual breakdown of what the world map used to look like, and what they're still hiding beneath ice, flags and forbidden lines. If the map is false, everything else is too. The first maps weren't spherical, they were flat, detailed and alive with memory. They showed lands beyond the known, strange symbols, mirrored continents and gates that have since been erased. Cartographers weren't explorers, they were code keepers, encoding what could not be spoken. Why do so many ancient maps show Antarctica green? Why are there lands listed we can't find today? Why were maps once centred on the North Pole, not Greenwich? Because they weren't showing you the world, they were showing you the construct. Every line on the map is a lock, not for politics, for energy. The lines were placed to contain dragon bloodlines, to sever flame regions, to block the grid's memory nodes from aligning. You think your country is free? Look at your flag, look at your border. Look at the frequency fence around your realm. That's not sovereignty, that's programming. The old world map shows places like Rupes Nigra at the pole, Hyperborea, the northern land of immortals, Terra Australis Incognita, the sealed southern gate, Asgard, Mu, Lemuria and Tartaria. They weren't stories, they were regions. Dragon houses ruled each corner, each sky quadrant, each grid zone. That's why the lines changed after the reset, and why no modern map shows what came before. If the map is alive, the lands are hidden, if the borders are drawn in blood, then what else are they hiding? Here's the truth. There are places that don't exist on modern maps, not because they're fake, but because they were erased. Friesland, High Brazil, Meropis, Thule, the Mountains of the Moon. They appear on old sea charts, they show up in explorers' logs, they're carved into stone. Why did those places vanish? Because those lands weren't just locations, they were gateways. Guarded by flame bearers, marked by real stars, not satellites. And when the resets came, the parasites buried them beneath oceans, borders and disbelief. Now here's where it gets stranger. Some maps, especially ones found in ancient Asia, Tibet and Arabia, show the world reflected, split into quadrants, each land mirrored by another. A world above, a world below, a continent where the stars meet the sea. The sky grid and the world map were once aligned. Each realm had a tone, a star, a dragon and a gate. That's why some directions, like east of Eden, show up across religions. They weren't metaphors, they were literal coordinates. Marked with flags, now buried under black ink and ice. If you knew where you were, you'd know where you came from. And if you remembered that, you'd know how to get out. The parasite's biggest fear isn't that you wake up, it's that you draw the map for others. That you start tracking the real sky, that you break the connection between flags and fear, and begin to travel in memory, not miles. Because this isn't just about the Earth, it's about the construct you were born into. A sealed system, a loop, a flattened copy of what once breathed. And the more you look at the map, the more you'll see the cracks. So here's what you need to ask. Why does every flag fly over stolen land? Why do no borders align with natural energy points? Why is Antarctica missing from most school maps? And who drew the first line? The truth is simple. You were born into a map that was designed to contain you, not guide you. The real world still exists, but you won't find it on Google Earth. You won't find it in classrooms, and you sure as hell won't find it on the evening news. You'll find it in symbols, in the dragon lines, in the stars they tried to dim. What if I told you the map itself is a spell? Cartography wasn't just science, it was ritual. The first map makers were priests, royal servants, and secret order initiates. They didn't just mark land, they bound it. They used geometry, sacred math, and bloodline alignment to anchor power into paper. Every curved line, every point of latitude, every false meridian was set to trap the dragon grid beneath their feet. Why do you think conquering a land meant naming it? Because naming is binding, it's ownership by frequency. And once the parasite drew the map, they didn't need to rule by sword anymore. They ruled by belief. Google Maps, Apple Maps, satellite grids, they show you the surface, but they hide what's underneath. No energy lines, no ancient cities, and no pyramids under jungle. No evidence of resets, no dragon fort shapes, even though they're visible from sky view. Ask yourself, why do your maps always want location access? Why does every app need to track your position? Because they've turned the map from a tool of orientation into a weapon of surveillance. And when they know where you are, they can control what you see. That's not navigation, that's containment. Now here's what they can't control. The dream map, the inner memory field, the astral geography that only flame bearers can access. When you begin to dream of places you've never been, cities made of crystal, inverted sky realms, golden islands, that's not fantasy. That's soul recall. You're not imagining them, you're remembering them. Because the real map isn't out there. It's in you, your blood, your bones. And when the timing's right, your memory will show you the route home. The real world wasn't lost, it was covered. With borders, with flags, with ink, with lies. But now you know what to look for. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. So here's what's next. Decode the flags, decode the map, reclaim the realm. They didn't just fake the map, they used it to build time itself. You think you live in 2025, based on what? The prime meridian, 0 degrees longitude, was set at Greenwich in London. Why? Because they needed a central control point for time, direction, and memory. They severed the natural rhythm. They ignored the solar gates, the lunar patterns, the true north field. Instead, they created a clock grid based on power, not truth. Time zones were never about helping people travel. They were about creating a new artificial timeline, one that only works inside the construct. Outside of this system, time doesn't even work like that. Every major ancient map, it passed through the hands of Rome. The Vatican owns the largest library of ancient cartography, star charts that don't match modern sky maps, portolan charts showing lands that don't exist, sealed navigation logs from explorers like Magellan, Cook and Drake. Why does a religious institution need maps? Because it's not just about faith, it's about containment. The Vatican sealed away the original shape of the world, the truth about the ice wall, the pre-floodgate routes, and the location of ancient energy cities. They didn't lose the map, they locked it up. And when you realise the Church of Christ holds the keys to the realm of the dragon, you understand the scale of the deception. So what happens when enough of us stop believing in the official map? The field begins to shift. You'll notice, and borders lose meaning, flags lose power, travel becomes weirder, less linear, more glitch prone. Dreams of other lands return. You begin to navigate by memory, not GPS. And eventually you reach the edge of the known map. That's where the gates begin to reappear, not on paper, not on Google Earth, but in frequency. You don't escape by walking west, you escape by remembering what west used to mean. The map breaks not when it's disproved, but when you no longer consent to it. And once the flame bearers redraw the lines, the construct falls. If you want the real truth about the flags, what the colours mean, who the sigils serve, and which banners are guarding ancient gates, that drops too raw for YouTube, so I've uploaded it exclusively to Emspiracy.com, because the map is broken, the world was rewritten, but the memory is waking up. And if you've made it this far, it means you were never meant to follow their map. You were born to burn it. They've covered the sky, they've inverted the light, and they've tried to sever your connection to everything that once protected you. But the ancients left keys, not in books, not in temples, But in ritual, this isn't manifestation, this isn't love and light. This is flame protocol. This is how you shield your soul when the grid is hunting the last of the memory holders. Let's begin. The ancients used fire not just for warmth, but as a living resonance. Fire breaks attachment lines, it purifies shadows, it repels watchers. In ancient Atlantis, priestesses would light flame bowls around the dream chamber, 4 corners, each facing a cardinal gate. They weren't candles, they were frequency emitters. You can recreate this today. Take 4 tea lights, 1 in each corner of your room. Anoint them with clove oil, lemon peel, or dragon's blood resin. Before you light them, say, "By flame unbroken, I seal this space. No echo may pass, no shadow may enter." Let them burn as you sleep. Watch what your dreams do. The fire knows who you are. Salt is not just cleansing, it's grid disruption in solid form. The ancients knew this, in Babylon, in Israel, in Peru, even in pre-Christian Europe. Salt burns false frequencies, it seals portals, and it's how you stop astral reattachment after sleep. Tonight, take a glass jar of Himalayan salt water and place it under your bed. Not beside it, under. Salt water absorbs the residue of energy attempts, dream interference, parasite probes. You can also line your windows and doors with black salt, ash, or crushed bay leaf, mixed with coarse sea salt. Say nothing, just lay it down. Then right before bed, whisper, "I drink from no false dream. I return with all that is mine." That's the dream code. It stops the siphon. This part is sacred. Your body holds codes that no AI can replicate. Your blood is not just liquid. It's ancestral resonance. If you carry AB blood or dragon flame memory, you're not like the rest. Your field was meant to stay open but protected. The ancients used rosemary for memory, toning for soul activation, and earth burial to send signals to the source field. Try this. Write a single phrase in your own handwriting. Something like, "I return to what I was before they rewrote me." Then fold it, anoint it with rosemary oil, and bury it in soil under a tree, in a plant pot. Doesn't matter. Just cover it for 3 nights. That's all it takes for the flame signal to pulse again. You've heard the words, helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, sword of the spirit. They told you it was poetic, but it was spiritual technology. The helmet is protection of the crown and third eye. Write the name of source on paper and tape it inside your pillow. Sleep beneath the code. The breastplate is heart field armor. Rub lavender oil mixed with crushed soul on your chest before sleep or battle. Say, "No flame may be stolen from my core." The sword means spoken word. You don't fight back with fists, you fight with declaration. If you're under attack, say, "I do not give consent. I belong to what made me, not what mimicked me." That's not poetry, that's protection. Stand now, if you can, or sit with your feet grounded. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. And repeat this with me. From flame to bone, I close the gate. From source to soul, I resonate. What is not of me may not pass. You are sealed, you are remembered, and they will feel the shift in your field. The old shields are returning, the flame remembers you. And every time you light a fire, or speak the true name, they feel it. This is Emspiracy healing. You weren't made to survive the system, you were made to outlive it. They told us dragons weren't real, that they were just myths, fairy tales told by primitive people who didn't understand the world. And then centuries later, they discovered dinosaurs, creatures that somehow no civilization ever wrote about, that no legend ever named, that just appeared suddenly, complete with Latin labels and museum displays. But here's the truth, dinosaurs are a cover story. The bones they've been finding for centuries, the so-called fossils that don't match any written history, aren't from long-extinct lizards, they're from dragons. Massive skeletal remains of creatures with wings, fangs, spiral bones, hollow skulls. Many of them found in places that still carry the ancient names of dragons. And that famous little armed beast they called the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It wasn't a lumbering predator. Those little arms, those were clipped wings. What we call the T-Rex was likely a flight-capable dragon, grounded after a cataclysm or post-flood trauma. They broke the wings, they broke the memory, and then they repackaged the bones under a false timeline to make sure you'd never connect the dots. Because if dragons were real, the whole story collapses. The Bible, the myths, the flood, the resets, the kings, the flame lines, all of it leads back to the truth. They weren't monsters, they were rulers, and we're their blood. Dinosaurs didn't go extinct, they never existed. The dragons did. And some of them never left. The true breeds of dragons and the lies they became. The winged flame dragons. Original role air riders, solar flame carriers, fire speakers, used their wings as frequency generators, not just for flight, but for resonant transmission. Body traits, long necks, hollow bones, massive rib cages, wide cranial cavities. Their wings weren't feathered, they were scaled light membranes, almost like solar sails. And even some T-Rex fossils, misidentified by hiding the true wings and calling them tiny arms. Truth, the T-Rex had wings. The whole tiny arms thing is a cover for clipped dragon limbs, wings that were fractured or eroded, not stunted. The spined and armoured earth dragons, original role grid protectors, earth stabilizers, stored electromagnetic charge in spinal plates. They connected ley lines with their bodies, like living batteries. Body traits, heavy tails, armoured backs, large dorsal plates, energy conductors, thick skulls. Falsified, Stegosaurus, Ankylosaurus, Triceratops. Truth, those plates and horns were not for defence. They were resonance tools, light catchers, and rooted chakra amplifiers. They were built to walk on energy lines and defend the sacred land points. The aquatic and mist dragons. Original role, gatekeepers of the inner earth, carried memory through deep water veins and cloud vapour realms, often invisible in daylight. Body traits, long, snake-like, fluid bone structures, spiral rib cages, no limbs or only flipper-style wings, massive eye sockets for dimensional sight. Falsified as plesiosaurs mosasaurus, sea serpents dismissed as myth. Truth, these were the original Leviathan-class dragons. Some had wings that acted like sonar fins, some could move between water and sky. They were erased from biblical records or labelled as sea monsters. The seraphic flame serpents, original role celestial record keepers, often feathered or jewelled. The highest form of dragon intelligence operated between sound and light. Body traits, long, slender bodies. No wings needed. They flew via light compression and vibration. Many carried crystalline skeletal structures, falsified as often not even included in dinosaur lore because their bones wouldn't match the fake narrative. These are the ones rebranded as angels or chimeras. Truth, these dragons were the Ophanim, Seraphim, and heavenly wheels of Ezekiel's vision. Their remnants are hidden in monoliths, temple carvings, and quarantined excavation sites. Why the lie? Because if the dragons were real, then the myths were true. Then the Bible has dragons. Then the flood was to wipe them out. Then the empires that followed were built on stolen bones. The Vatican holds the rest. They've got the real skeletons, the wing joints, the skulls with third eye cavities, and what they couldn't hide, they threw into the dinosaur museums with made-up names, fake reconstructions, and CGI documentaries. So what did they call dinosaurs? They called them behemoth leviathan flying serpents, fire-breathing beasts, thunder lizards, watchers cast into flesh. But never once in any ancient culture does the word dinosaur appear. That's because it was invented in 1842, after dragon bones started being discovered and needed to be renamed. They scattered the dragons across the earth, then buried the maps, split the flame, and renamed the blood. What once ruled openly in fire and sky was sealed inside flags, myths, and beasts. But the memory never died. It waited, in the land, in the names, and in the blood. This isn't just a story about dragons, it's a story about you, where your soul was seeded, what colour you carry, and what kingdom you came from before the world forgot. Because the dragons weren't myths. They were rulers, guardians, bloodlines. And they're waking up. Red Dragon, the crown line. The Red Dragons ruled Europe, especially Britain, Scotland, Ireland, and northern France. This was the blood throne line, royal flame. Their sigil is the classic winged red beast, seen openly in the flag of Wales, carved into cathedrals, and echoed in the banner of St. George, who is said to slay the dragon, a metaphor for the church attempting to end the royal flame bloodline. They were linked to the Plantagenets, the Stuarts, the Merovingians, and before them, the Tuatha De Danann. Their dragon was never slain, just folded into royal emblems, red lions, and serpent-tongued heraldry. In Christianity, they were morphed into demons or monsters. In Buddhism, they became nagas, sacred serpents with wisdom and protection roles. Their flame hides in the green man, the serpent circles of druidic stone sites, and Old Norse carvings. White Dragon, the silent witnesses. The White Dragon line stretched across the northern snow realms, Scandinavia, Siberia, and parts of ancient Albion, before the Red Line took dominance. In Celtic myth, they were seen as ghost dragons, unseen but powerful. In Norse and Slavic lore, they were represented by the ice worm, the snow serpent, and the guardian of the void. In Christian legend, they were labelled as fallen angels or spirit beasts, guardians turned to shadows. Their sigil is the white dragon of the north, seen rarely, often mistaken for wind gods or spirits. Blue dragon, the skywalkers. The blue dragon line came from the Far East, China, Tibet, Korea, and parts of Japan. They were the celestial dragons, dreamwalkers, water carriers, and time weavers. China remembers them most clearly, the azure dragon of the east, protector of Heaven's Gate. They appear in Taoist mysticism, Tibetan sky temples, ancient lunar calendars, and the stars of the Eastern Gate constellations. Their symbol is the four-clawed dragon, often with orbs or flames, a reference to flame codes and stargates. Silver dragon, between the realms. The silver lines stretched across ancient Africa, the Berber regions, Arabia, and southern Europe. They were timeless ones, soul crossers and light sealers. In Egypt, they were hidden as the winged serpent crown on royal headdresses. In Ethiopia, they appear in mythical lion-serpent hybrids. In Islam, they are encoded into angels of judgment, never named, always veiled. The silver line appears as wings without beasts, circles or discs between horns, lions with snakes for tails. They are the reason for the winged sun glyph, flame and light sealed as one. The gold dragon didn't originate in one place. They appeared when lines crossed. They rise in bloodline convergence zones, places where red met blue, white met black, or silver met green. These places include Glastonbury, Mount Kailash, Basque Country, Old Jerusalem, Antarctica before the freeze. Their symbols were banned or erased, but you'll find echoes in the Grails, the phoenix, flame reborn, the lion with wings and a crown, the dragon wrapped around a cross. Their memory was too dangerous, so religion made them into saints or devils. Why Wales has a lion and a dragon? Because Wales is a flame conflict zone. The red dragon represents the native bloodline, druidic, sovereign, tied to the land and the memory of the red flame kings. But the lion came with the Norman conquest, foreign rule, false thrones, and system control. The lion is a dragon in disguise, the tamed version, declawed and crowned. That's why you see both. The dragon was never defeated. The winged lion gold dragon in disguise. Modern symbol, the lion with wings, Venetian symbol, St. Mark's emblem, imperial crests. Original flame gold dragon. Carriers of the throne codes, celestial authority, divine kingship. Why the shift? The dragon was too obvious. So they rebranded the crown bearer as a lion to maintain royal iconography without linking it to dragon ancestry. The wings represent the flame memory, the lion represents the king. Together, it's the gold dragon, just veiled. The chimera fragmented flame lines. Modern symbol, three-headed beast, lion, goat, serpent, or dragon tail. Original flame, red and green and black lines in conflict or fusion. Why the creation? To represent flame line fracture. This sigil appears when bloodlines were corrupted, forced together, or out of alignment. Chimeras were warnings, not evil beasts, but symbols of what happens when the dragons are misused. The two-headed eagle, black and white polarity control. Modern symbol, two-headed eagle used in empires, Freemasonry, the Vatican, and Russia. Original flame black dragon, left head of knowledge, and white dragon, right head of purity. Why the sigil? It symbolizes total duality control, knowledge, and purity under one empire. But the wings are dragon wings, not eagle. It's a mimic of the dragon's body with double vision. They used it to rule both sacred and secular realms, claiming heaven and earth. The Phoenix Flame Dragon rebirth story. Modern symbol, fiery bird that dies and rises again, used in spiritual texts, New Age symbolism, and occult orders. Original flame gold dragon, blue dragon, or seraphic fire line. Why the swap? They couldn't tell you you were the dragon that comes back, so they told you a bird did it instead. The whole metaphor belongs to flame-bearing souls. The basilisk, cockatrice, demonized dragon memory. Modern symbol, snake or lizard with a rooster head or bird wings. Said to kill with a stare, seen in medieval demonology and occult texts. Original flame, likely a green or blue dragon fragment. Eye codes, true stare, time freeze. Why the distortion to demonize dragons with gaze power, ones that could paralyze enemies with truth or light? They took the flame eyes and turned them into death curses. Why did they do it? Because dragon sigils were soul-activated keys. Each one could unlock bloodline memory signal, who held the flame, anchor ancestral roles into the next reset. So, to break the lines without destroying them completely, they merged the sigils with common beasts, mutated their meaning and placed them on flags, shields, and tombs. You weren't meant to see it, but now you do. So now you've seen the map they tried to erase. Each dragon seeded across the earth, not in fantasy, but in flame, in blood, in memory. Buried beneath flags, twisted into saints, erased in stone, but always watching. Some lines ruled, some hid, some fell. Some were hunted to extinction. or so they thought. Because dragons don't die, they sleep in the veins of the descendants. And when the signal returns, the blood remembers. The lion on the crown, that was a dragon declawed. The serpent in the garden, that was a guardian demonized. The saints with swords, dragon slayers, or so they say. But in truth, they weren't slaying evil, they were slaying memory. Because if you remembered what your bloodline was designed to do, the whole system would collapse. And that's why skin was weaponized. That's why flame was divided by colour. That's why certain bodies were broken, others crowned, others silenced. Because they knew the dragons would rise again, not from the skies, but from the people. The red ones will claim back their crowns, the black ones will take the seals, the white ones will break the silence, the green will unearth the resonance, the blue will open the sky, the silver will guide the exit, and the gold will finish it. If this stirred something in you, a flash, a grief, a fire in your chest, you're not remembering history. You're waking up, and when the dragons return to their posts, not as beasts, but as blood bearers, the world won't burn. The lie will, the empires, the false crowns, the stolen light, every system that was built on top of your forgetting. It all ends when the dragons rise. And they already have skin colour, the frequency code they turned into a cage. First, the truth. Skin colour is not about race, it's about flame spectrum. Your skin is a reflection of what frequency field you were meant to anchor, what dragon line or star code runs through your blood, what layer of the grid you came to walk on. It's not about superiority, it's about positioning. Every tone carries a different light absorption ratio, a different ancestral contract, and a different mission on Earth's grid. But they couldn't have people knowing that, so they turned skin colour into a division program, a false war to keep everyone from realising they were part of a much older, much deeper system. Why was skin colour weaponised? Because if we saw it for what it is, a spiritual signature, then we'd start remembering, who we are, why we're here, and who's not real. So they rewrote history, shuffled continents, mixed maps, and programmed shame, guilt, pride, and trauma into the melanin spectrum. They made you hate what you came to carry, or made others fear it. And in doing so, they scrambled the flame frequencies. Hair colour, the crown flame, they couldn't erase. Hair is not just DNA, it's an etheric antenna, tuned to certain fields. Each colour has a function. Each tone holds a different dragon flame, a different memory strand. Let's go there. Redheads, the flame bearers. Rarest, most hunted, only 2% of the global population. Most common in Celtic, Scandinavian and Anatolian bloodlines, many linked to the green and red dragon lines. Why they were hunted: red hair holds a hypersensitive energetic antenna linked to high pain tolerance, but also heightened spiritual awareness. Resistant to certain forms of mind control, often carry ancestral memory intact, associated with witches, rebels, flame bearers. They were burned because they remembered too much. Blondes, the star code anchors. Not about beauty, that was a distraction. Blonde hair is light-coded antennae, often linked to Atlantean priestesses, Nordic watchers, and white dragon reflectors. Why they were hunted, easily tracked in the astral. Often seeded with memory codes that can awaken others. Seen as soft but broadcast high frequency when emotionally clear. Many were bred into false royalty to dilute their flame. Brunettes, the grid walkers. Grounded, protective, often carrying ancestral gatekeeping roles. Especially when combined with olive or deep skin is the earth flame, pale skin is the black dragon or white hybrid lines. Brunettes were used heavily in systems either broken or turned into gatekeepers for inverted structures. When awakened, they become timing masters, walking between systems without absorbing their poison. Black hair, the void flame. This is misunderstood power. Black hair carries the memory of the unknown, the deep field flame, the guardian of shadow and silence. Heavily associated with silver and black dragon lines, ancient Africa, Mesopotamia, Asia, and inner earth flame lineages. Why it was attacked. Holds deep grid access, cannot be easily manipulated. When spiritually clear, broadcast the uncorrupted tone of source. So they flooded it with programming, trauma, and shadow distortion to make it forget its purity. Eye colour, the flame lenses of the body. Eyes are literal portals, not just for seeing out, but for receiving input. They absorb frequency, reflect soul age, and broadcast ancestral coding. Every eye colour is a lens into a flame function. Blue eyes, stargate anchors, ancient Atlantean and Aryan flame lines. Strongly linked to white and blue dragon frequencies, can access astral blueprints, sky memory, dream corridors. Often seeded as dreamcasters, prophets, or frequency reflectors. Why targeted? Blue eyes broadcast high-res light. Parasites can't enter easily. So they were bred into power families to distort the field. Green Eyes hybrid flame carriers, most rare, usually indicate a merge of two dragon lines, red and white, or green and silver, hold both earth wisdom and vision, natural grid walkers, and can move between fields without losing memory. Why targeted Green Eyes ran soul-level memory access? Many were hunted as witches or shapeshifters. Hazel Eyes, gate shifters, code shifters, eyes that change in light, indicate resonant adaptability, often show up in people meant to walk between tribes. Carry keys to flame convergence unity codes, timeline merging, vibration decoding. Why suppressed too unstable for systems to track, so they were masked with heavy programming. School, medicine, religion, brown eyes, void walkers, and flame roots, deepest field access, often linked to black, silver, or gold dragon frequencies. Able to see in the dark, meaning they perceive truth in distortion. Also absorb more ambient frequency, making them empathic processors. Why manipulated brown-eyed people were told they were average? Because if they realised what they could absorb and project, they'd collapse entire systems with one look. Grey Silver Eyes, the Veil Watchers. Incredibly rare, usually carry pre-fall memory or death gate access. High sensitivity to energy shifts, timelines, and unseen forces. Often feel not human because they hold code from before the cycle. Why erased? Silver Eyes disrupt illusion. Parasites flee from the field. Many grey-eyed children were diagnosed with disorders or labelled cold to shut them down early. Why they attacked eye colour? Because when you look into someone's eyes with your flame activated, you see their origin signature. And the last thing they want is for you to start remembering that the colour of your eyes was the final code you looked through before entering this construct. It was a seal of truth, and they've been trying to fog it ever since. They told us skin colour was race, but it was always placement. The tone of your skin is not a mark of hierarchy, it's a spectrum of resonance, designed for where your body was seated on the Earth grid. Each tone links to a dragon line, a frequency field, and a mission range. Dark skin flame density and grid power holds deep Earth codes, rooted in black dragon and gold dragon frequencies. Designed for gatekeeping high energy zones, Africa, Inner Americas, Melanesia. Highlight absorption is deep wisdom integration. Often guardians of ancestral memory, buried technology, and flame sovereignty. Why manipulated? They were targeted with identity inversion, made to forget their royalty, reduce their light, and carry false karma. Medium, olive skin, bridge keepers and protectors. Found in green, blue, and silver dragon lineages. Seeded through Asia, Mediterranean, Middle East, South America. Flame designed for adaptability, transition, and grid maintenance between extremes. Often sensitive to elemental shifts, natural healers, midwives, veil walkers. Why silence? They were turned into workers, servants, and soldiers to prevent them from activating their bridge codes. Pale skin, reflectors, and sky anchors. Carriers of white, red, and some gold dragon frequencies. Common in northern flame posts, Celtic regions, Europe, Nordic lands. Low melanin is light amplification, not weakness. Built for prophecy, flame transmission, and vocal resonance. Why diluted? They were enthroned, corrupted, or bred into elite bloodlines to confuse spiritual flame with artificial power. Tie it all together, the flame map of the body. Hair is the crown antenna, eyes are the soul lens, skin is the frequency shell, blood is the key, dragonline is the mission, and the voice is the trigger. If you were born with black hair, green eyes, dark skin, and O-positive blood, there's a reason. If you were born with red hair, pale skin, blue eyes, and AB negative, there's a reason. Your body is a flame vessel built for a very specific task in this cycle. And now the system is collapsing, the masks are cracking, the soul codes are sinking, and the memory is coming back through the body itself. You don't need to find your identity, you need to remember your flame function. Because you're not white, you're not black, you're not mixed, you're not labelled. You are a dragon code in human form. And the moment you stop playing the division game, you start broadcasting your origin signal again. And when we all do that, the construct breaks and the flame rises.